It was a little past midnight. It was my first time visiting Barcelona. My flight had been delayed by a few hours, and when I stepped out of the airport, the city was almost completely silent. My phone battery had dropped to 12%. The address of my hotel reservation was on my phone. It was a small boutique hotel in the city center. Normally, I would have taken the bus from the airport. But at that hour, all I wanted was to get into bed. I walked to the taxi stand. There were only a few vehicles in line. I approached the first taxi. The driver rolled down the window. Hotel name. I showed him my phone. The man looked at the screen. Then he nodded. Center. Yes. 20 minutes. He took my luggage and loaded it into the car. I sat in the back seat. The taxi set off. For the first 10 minutes, nothing was out of the ordinary. The city lights flickered past the window. I was looking at the hotel on my phone. Then the driver turned off the navigation. GPS isn't needed, he said. Okay. A few minutes later, we turned off the main road. We entered narrow streets. It grew increasingly quiet around us. I looked out the window. I realized we were very far from the tourist areas. Are we going the right way? The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. Shortcut. I tried to open the map on my phone. There was no internet connection. The map didn't load. The driver drove a bit further. Then my phone rang. They were calling from the hotel reception. I answered. Hello. The woman on the other end spoke quickly. Are you already in the taxi? Yes. There was a short silence. Then the woman asked, What's the license plate? I looked at the driver. Why? Please tell me. There was something in her voice. She was anxious. I gave her the license plate. The woman remained silent for a few seconds. Then, that's not one of our taxis. My heart accelerated. Maybe I got the wrong car. The woman replied immediately. No. Listen to me. Don't tell the driver where you're staying. At that moment, the driver looked at me in the mirror. I pulled the phone slightly away from my ear. Why? The woman spoke in a very low voice. Because the driver who was supposed to pick you up is waiting outside the hotel. The phone froze in my hand. The driver was still watching the road. I didn't say a word. The woman continued. He's been waiting for 20 minutes. Your taxi was supposed to have a blue sticker on the windshield. I looked at the windshield. There was no sticker. Only a small black rearview mirror tag. The driver suddenly spoke. Everything okay? Yes. I tried to keep my voice as normal as possible. I hung up the phone. Then I looked at the hotel address again. The direction the driver was going was the exact opposite. I quickly ran a plan through my head. I couldn't open the door and jump out. The vehicle was in motion. Shouting didn't make sense either. My phone battery had dropped to 8%. Then an idea came to mind. Could you stop at a gas station? The driver looked at me in the mirror. Why? Bathroom. He thought for a few seconds. 10 minutes. Okay. The car kept going. However, even after 10 minutes had passed, no gas station appeared. The roads were now pitch black. Finally, the driver pulled up in front of a small building. Here, I looked out the window. This was not a hotel. It was an old two-story building. A single light was on in front of it. There was a sign above the door, but the sign was too far away. I couldn't read it. The driver opened the trunk. "Come." I didn't move. "Where are we?" The expression on the man's face changed. For the first time, he smiled. "Your hotel." At that moment, my phone rang again. This time, the caller was not the woman from the hotel reception. There was an unsaved number on the screen. I answered. Only one sentence came from the other end. "Don't open the door." The phone went dead. The driver was still waiting outside. Then he tried to open the car door. I held onto the lock. It didn't open. A second later, the man yanked the handle of the back door again. Harder this time. I shouted without lowering the window. I said, "I'm staying here." The man didn't answer. Then he walked to the front of the vehicle. And he pulled out the ignition key. The engine shut down. The headlights went off. I was left alone in the darkness. The driver stood in front of the door. Then he went inside the building. I waited a few seconds. Then a very weak internet signal appeared on my phone. I immediately opened the map. I checked my location. I was approximately 34 kilometers away from my hotel. And worse, the building I was in didn't appear on the map. Just then, I noticed a slight movement on the windshield of the car. I looked at the black tag hanging from the rearview mirror. Up close, I was able to read it. It had a single word on it: private. Then the curtain on the second floor of the building parted slightly. Someone was watching me from inside. My phone rang again. This time it was the receptionist speaking. "Where are you?" I told her my location. There was a long silence. Then the woman, "Don't move. Police are on the way." "How do you know this place?" "Because we've had 3 other guests disappear after taking that same taxi." The phone almost slipped from my hand. The curtain outside the window closed again. About 2 minutes later, the sound of sirens was heard in the distance. The driver ran out of the building. He was heading toward the car. I locked the doors. The man banged on the glass. "Open the door." The sound of the sirens drew closer. The man suddenly stopped. Then he turned around and ran into the darkness. A few seconds later, police vehicles arrived. They pulled me out of the car. They searched for the driver, but they couldn't find him. The building was empty too. There was no one inside. Only on the upper floor. There were 3 separate bedrooms. A bed in each room. A suitcase beside each bed. And on the doors of all 3 rooms, the names of people from different countries were written. My name was there too. On the 4th door, the police officer looked at me. "Have you ever seen this room before?" I shook my head. "No." He opened the door. Inside there was a small table. On top of the table lay a photocopy of my passport. Yet I had never made a photocopy of my passport. The officer picked up the paper. He looked at the date underneath. Then the expression on his face completely changed. Because on the paper was tomorrow's date. I looked at the paper in the police officer's hand again. Tomorrow's date. He nodded. Yes. How is this possible? He didn't answer. He folded the paper and put it in his pocket. Then he looked inside the room. You won't be staying here. I don't want to stay anyway. We went downstairs. There were 2 more police officers at the entrance of the building. I described the driver to them. Dark hair, around 50 years old, black jacket. But there was something strange. One of the officers asked me, "Have you seen the driver before?" No. Do you know his name? No. Do you remember the license plate? I gave it to him. The officer checked his computer. Then he looked at the other officer. This plate. He stopped mid-sentence. What? Has been reported stolen. When? The officer looked at the screen. 3 years ago. At that moment, a heaviness settled in my stomach. 3 years. The same number was confronting me again. The police put me in another vehicle. They were actually taking me to my hotel. On the way, no one spoke. I plugged my phone into charge. When the phone turned on, hundreds of notifications arrived. But one of them caught my attention. It came from the hotel app. Reservation updated. I looked at my reservation. The hotel name was the same. The date was the same. But the room number had changed. Room 304. I had booked room 204. I tapped the new room number in the app. A photograph opened. Room 304. A small table beside the bed. A window. And an old painting on the wall. Underneath the photo. Last occupied, 2023. I showed the phone to the police officer. I didn't change this. The officer looked at the screen. Is this the hotel's app? Yes. He gave the phone back to me. We'll check when we connect to Wi-Fi. When we arrived at the hotel, the receptionist was surprised to see us. Daniel. Yes. The woman took a deep breath. Thank God. Why? Because we haven't been able to reach you since we called your driver. I called you. No. I pulled out my phone. I showed her the call log. The woman looked at the screen. Then her face turned pale. That's not our number. What? She showed me another number. This is our reception number. I compared it to the number on my phone. The digits were almost identical. Only the last 2 digits were different. I didn't know who had called me that night. But I was sure of one thing. The person trying to get me out of that taxi was not a hotel employee. The police left. I went up to my room. I locked the door. I drew the curtains. And finally, I sat on the bed. It was 3:51 a.m. A notification arrived on my phone. From an unknown number. A single photo. I opened the photo. My breath caught for a moment. In the photo was me. It was taken as I was getting into the taxi. Underneath the photo was a small timestamp. 12:17 a.m. But the location where the photo was taken was not the airport. I zoomed in on the sign visible in the background of the photo. The sign bore the name of that building. And in the bottom right corner of the photo, beside my suitcase, stood the same taxi with the black tag. Then a new message arrived. On your next journey, choose room 304. Beneath the message was a location, the address of the hotel. But something else had been added to the end of the address. Room 304, tomorrow. I read the message several times. Room 304, tomorrow. I left the phone on the bed. I tried to tell myself it was just a bad joke. But no one was supposed to know my room number. Moreover, the person who sent the photo must have been following me since the airport. I didn't sleep until morning. At 7 o'clock, I went down to reception. The woman from last night was there. I want to ask something about room 304. The expression on the woman's face changed. 304. Yes. She fell silent for a few seconds. Then, we don't use that room. Why? It has been closed for 3 years. Is it undergoing maintenance? She shook her head. No. Can you tell me why it's closed? The woman looked around. Then she lowered her voice. A guest disappeared there. The coldness inside me returned. Went 3 years ago. The exact same date again. Were the police notified? They were. Was he found? No. Who was he? Before answering, the woman retrieved an old file from under the reception desk. She opened the file. She pulled out a photograph from inside. When I saw the man in the photo, I dropped the coffee cup in my hand. The man was the taxi driver who had picked me up last night. The woman whispered, "Do you know him? This man picked me up last night." The woman looked at my face for several seconds. Then she took the photo back. That's not possible. Why? Because this photo was taken in 2019. The man has been missing since that date. I couldn't reply. The woman turned to the computer. Then she opened my reservation details. Daniel. Yes. There's a problem with your reservation. What? It doesn't show that you checked into this hotel last night. I was here. No. She turned the screen toward me. The status of my reservation. No show. How is this possible? The woman shook her head. Who gave you the room key last night? You did. I wasn't working last night. At that moment, a voice came from behind me. Daniel. I turned around. The receptionist who had greeted me last night was standing there. But her face was pale white. She walked toward me. Come with me. Last night you. Not now. She led me to the hotel's back office. She closed the door. Then she opened security footage on the computer. I didn't want to show you this footage. The hotel's entrance door was visible on the screen. Time: 12:06 a.m. I was entering the hotel. My suitcase was in my hand. I walked past the camera. But behind me, no one followed. Then the time became 12:09 a.m. The me on the screen approached reception. I said something. The receptionist gave me a key. But on the camera, there was no one behind the reception desk. I was speaking into thin air. Then I picked up the key myself and went upstairs. The footage changed. The hallway camera switched on. I entered room 204. About 10 minutes later, the door opened again. I came outside. But this time, someone was beside me. His face was not turned toward the camera. Dark jacket, black shoes, and in his hand, he had my suitcase. The two of us walked toward the end of the hallway. Then, the camera footage cut out. When the screen came back on, the time was 2:43 a.m. Only my suitcase stood in the hallway. I wasn't there, nor was the man beside me. The receptionist whispered as she looked at the screen. That is why we closed room 304. What? Because everyone who disappears sees that room first. My phone vibrated. A new message had arrived. This time the message was very short. Go up to 304 tonight. And right underneath it, because the man you saw in the taxi last night. A second later, the second message arrived. Is still in the same hotel as you. When I stepped out of the office, the hallway was quieter than usual. The receptionist came behind me. Daniel. I turned. Don't stay in your room tonight. Why? Because I've seen that message before. Who was sending it? The woman didn't answer. She just pulled out her phone and showed me old messages. The same number. The same sentences. And after every message, a guest had vanished. How many people? 3. And did all of them see room 304? The woman nodded. First the taxi. Then 304. Then they vanish. What should I do? The woman looked at me. Leave the city. At that moment, I decided to leave the hotel. I grabbed my bag. I went down to reception. The woman looked at me silently. Don't go by taxi. I'll walk. No. The bus. Don't take the bus either. Then what am I going to do? The woman thought for a moment. The police. Just as I was about to step outside, a black car stopped in front of the hotel door. Someone got out. Dark jacket, black shoes, and in his hand, he was carrying my suitcase. I froze. My suitcase was right beside me. The man dropped the suitcase in his hand onto the ground. Then he looked at me. The moment I saw his face, I recognized him. The taxi driver from last night. But this time he looked old. Much older. The man walked toward reception. The woman pulled me behind her. Stay here. The man stopped in front of the door. He looked at me through the glass. Then he pulled out his phone. My phone rang at the exact same time. Message. Don't look at him. I didn't raise my head. But the man began to speak from behind the glass. I couldn't hear his voice. I could read his lips. 304. Then, tonight, we called the police. About 10 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. The man had vanished. The suitcase was gone too. One of the officers asked me, "Do you know this person?" "Yes." Who is he? The taxi driver. The officer looked at the other. There is no taxi driver here. He was just here. The officer turned on the security camera. In the footage, I was standing at reception. The receptionist was beside me. In front of the door. There was no one. I was looking into empty space. Then I suddenly pulled back, as if someone had approached me. The officer paused the footage. You say you saw this man here? Yes. Daniel. Yes. This footage is live. My blood ran cold. The officer turned the screen toward me. Time, 12:17 p.m. But the time on my phone showed 12:17 a.m. The officer looked at my phone. Then his face changed. What day is today? I looked at the date. And at that moment, I remembered the date written on the photo from last night. August 14. The date on my phone. August 14. But on the calendar, 3 years had passed since August 14. I wasn't inside the night from 3 years ago. I was reliving the night from 3 years ago. The receptionist suddenly whispered, Daniel. What? The key to room 304. The woman looked onto the counter. A small metal key lay there. On it, 304 was written, and beside the key was my passport. A piece of paper was tucked inside the passport. Only one sentence was written on the paper. Remember to get out of the taxi this time. I picked up the key. The metal was cold. There was no hotel logo on it. Just a small number. The receptionist shook her head. Don't take it. How is this key sitting next to my passport? She didn't answer. One of the police officers took the key from my hand. No one is going up to that room. Just then the hotel's lights went out. The entire building was plunged into darkness. A few seconds later, emergency lights turned on. Red. The elevator screen at the end of the hallway lit up. 3. Then 2. 1. The elevator was coming down. The officer drew his gun. Nobody move. The elevator doors opened. It was empty inside. But on the floor were wet footprints. The prince exited the elevator and headed straight for the stairs. To the 3rd floor. One of the officers followed the tracks. The other said to me, You stay here. The elevator door closed again. I remained beside the receptionist. The woman looked at me. Did you see him? Who? The man in the taxi. Yes. The woman closed her eyes. I saw him too. Went. The night before the first guest disappeared. Then the man told me something. What? The woman whispered. One day he will return to his own room. Right at that moment, a loud noise came from the 3rd floor. Bang! Then something fell to the ground. Static sounded from the officer's radio. Dispatch. The voice cut off. Officer. No answer. The receptionist looked at me. You must go. Where? Anywhere. Come with me. The woman shook her head. I can't come. Why? Because my room. Is 304. Suddenly, the phone at the end of the hallway rang. The hotel's old landline phone. The woman didn't answer. The phone rang again. Then again. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. "Hello?" A voice came from the other side. The woman's face changed. She handed the receiver to me. "It's for you." "Who?" "Listen." I brought the receiver to my ear. Silence. Then a whisper. "Daniel." It was my own voice. "Come to 304. "No. If you don't." A short silence. "Someone else will disappear this time." The phone disconnected. The receptionist began to cry. "What did he say?" "Someone else will disappear." The woman raised her head. "Who?" Just as I was about to answer, the hotel's entrance door opened. A man walked inside. He wore an airport employee uniform. A suitcase was in his hand. He looked at us. "Room 304. The woman sprang to her feet. "No." The man was startled. "Sorry." The woman ran toward him. "Don't stay here." The man backed away. Then he looked at me. And he smiled. He dropped the suitcase in his hand onto the floor. "I'm late." My phone vibrated. New message. "The third person has arrived." Followed by a second message. "Now it's your turn." The airport employee just stood by the door. The receptionist looked at me, trembling. "Do you know him?" I shook my head. "No." The man smiled. "You will." Then he reached into his pocket. One of the police officers returned from the third floor. "What's going on here?" The man turned to him. "Room 304. The officer frowned. "What?" The man repeated the same thing. 304. The officer raised his gun. "Show your ID." The man pulled an ID from his pocket. The officer looked at the ID. Then at his face. He suddenly froze. "This is impossible." "What happened?" The officer didn't answer. He handed the ID to me. The person in the photo was one of the men reported missing last night. His name, Marcus Reed. Underneath was his date of birth. But his date of death was written too. August 14, 2023. This man is dead. The airport employee was still smiling. "I know I'm dead." At that moment, all phones rang simultaneously. Mine, the receptionist's phone, the officer's phone. They all displayed the same number. The officer answered the phone. A male voice came from the other side. "Third floor." The call ended. The sound of a door was heard from upstairs. Thud. Then another. Thud. Then a third. Thud. The officer moved toward the stairs. "Stay here." I watched him from behind. When he reached the third floor, he shouted from the hallway, "Nobody move." Then the sound of a gunshot came. Bang! The receptionist screamed. As for the airport employee, he showed no reaction at all. He just looked at me. "Now you must go." "Where?" "To 304. "No." If you don't go there, the officer will die. This is a trap. Of course. The man bowed his head. But you have no other choice. Right at that moment, the police officer's voice came from above. Daniel. I heard the fear in his voice. Daniel, come upstairs. The receptionist grabbed my arm. Don't go. But I was already walking toward the stairs. I went up to the 3rd floor. The hallway was pitch black. The officer was lying on the floor. His gun was a few meters away from him. But he didn't appear injured. He was merely unconscious. At the end of the hallway, the door to room 304 was open. Light was coming from inside. My suitcase stood beside the door. Yet my suitcase had been downstairs. I slowly approached the door. I heard my own voice from inside. You finally came. I opened the door. Inside the room, there was a bed, a desk, a chair, and on the desk, 3 phones, 3 passports, photos of 3 different people. But the 4th photo was me. Underneath the photo was a single date. August 14, 2026. Today's date. And one of the phones on the desk rang. The screen displayed. Caller Daniel. I answered the phone. My own voice came from the other side. Now only one thing remains. What? Deciding which of us gets to leave this room. The door behind me slowly closed. The door locked behind me. Nothing happened inside the room for a few seconds. Then the phone on the desk rang again. On the screen again. Caller Daniel. I didn't answer. The phone went silent. The 2nd phone rang. Then the 3rd. All 3 began ringing at the same time. The silence inside the room completely vanished. I picked up one of the phones. There was a live security camera image on the screen. In the image, I was standing inside the room. But the camera angle wasn't from the corner of the room. The camera was under the bed. Suddenly, something else moved on the screen. Someone was under the bed. Dark jacket. Black shoes. He slowly raised his head. I couldn't see his face. Then a whisper came from the phone speaker. Don't turn around. I froze. Because the voice was my voice. I kept looking at the phone screen. The person under the bed began to slowly crawl out. First his hands, then his shoulders, then his face. Me. The exact same face. The exact same clothes. But the expression on his face was different. As if he hadn't slept for days. The me on the screen approached the camera. He moved his lips. This time I could read what he said. Don't open the door. I looked at the door behind me. Someone knocked on the door from outside. Thud. Then. Thud. Then a 3rd time. Thud. Daniel. It was the police officer's voice. Open the door. The me on the phone screen shook his head. No. The officer's voice came again. Daniel, open it right now. I saw a shadow under the door. Someone's feet were in front of the door. But the shadow was not shaped like a human. It was long. The head portion extended all the way to the ceiling. Then a piece of paper was pushed under the door. I slowly bent down and picked it up. On it, "The person who exits 304 is obligated to return to 304 was written." The me on the phone screen suddenly vanished. The screen went dark. Then a new message appeared. "Now open the door." I looked at the door. "Who is there?" No reply came. "Are you the police?" Silence. Then from behind the door, I heard my own voice. "No." I took a step back. The voice continued. "I am you." The door handle slowly moved down. I checked the lock. It was locked. Yet the door began to open slowly. And behind the door, there was no one. Only a long, dark hallway. And at the end of the hallway stood the exact same room. Another one. The same number. The same door. The same light. And in front of that door, my suitcase was standing. I looked at room 304 at the end of the hallway. I understood that there was nowhere left to run. I walked slowly. The suitcase in front of the door was mine. My name was written on its label. But on the date section, August 14, 2023 was written. I opened the suitcase. My clothes didn't come out from inside. 3 phones, 3 passports, and photos of 3 different people. My breath caught when I picked up the final photo. I was in the photo. But behind me stood that taxi driver. On the back of the photo was a single sentence. "You are the 4th person." At that moment, the lights in the hallway went out. One of the phones rang. I answered. My own voice was speaking. "Now open the door." What happens next? It will be morning. What if I don't open it? A brief silence. Everything resets. I reached for the door handle. I opened the door. There was no one inside the room. Only a table. A taxi key on the table. And a hotel key card. On the card, 204 was written. The moment I picked up the card, a door closed behind me. I turned around. The hallway was gone. I found myself in the hotel lobby. Morning had arrived. Sunlight was streaming through the windows. The receptionist was sitting behind the desk. When she saw me, she stood up. "Daniel." "Yes." "Are you okay?" "I think so." The woman looked at me for a long time. Then she smiled. "Your reservation is ready." "Which room number?" The woman looked at the computer. 204. I took a deep breath. "It's not 304. The woman frowned. "No. There is no room 304. I turned around and looked at the elevator. On the screen there were only 1, 2, 3, 4 was missing. I wanted to tell everything to the police. But when I asked who the officer on the 3rd floor was, the receptionist looked at me in bewilderment. "No police came here." "What do you mean they didn't come? You were the only one in the hotel all night." I pulled out my phone. I looked at the photos. None of them were there. The messages were gone. The call history was empty. Everything had been deleted. I opened my last photo taken before going to the hotel. It had been taken at the airport. In the background stood a white taxi. I zoomed in. I saw the driver's face. This time his face hadn't changed. It wasn't my face. It wasn't the officer's face. Nor was it someone I didn't know. It was my father's face. I had lost my father 12 years ago. I closed the photo. I left the hotel. I went to the airport with another vehicle. I never told anyone about what I experienced that night. Until 3 months later, when an email arrived from the same hotel. Subject of the email: your stay was completed successfully. There was only one sentence in the message: thank you for staying in room 304. I never went back to that hotel again. But sometimes, at 2:43 a.m. at night, my phone rings. An unsaved number appears on the screen. I never answer it, because I answered it once. I still can't forget the first sentence that came from the other end. Daniel, the taxi is downstairs. It's waiting for you. It was 11:40 p.m. After my last night in Prague, I had to get to the airport. The hotel employee had told me that the last bus passed just before midnight. Don't miss it, she said. When is the next one? The woman thought for a short moment. Morning. When I arrived at the bus stop, the street was almost completely empty. It was cold. My phone battery was at 10%. I checked the bus schedule. 23:48. A minute later, headlights appeared in the distance. The bus pulled up to the stop. The number on it was Night 17. The doors opened. I went inside. The driver didn't look at me at all. I scanned my card and moved toward the back. There were only 3 people on the bus. An elderly man at the very back. A young woman wearing headphones in the middle. And at the front, a man with his face turned toward the window. The bus set off. The first few minutes were normal. Then I opened the map. I noticed something. The bus was not going to the airport. The blue line on the map was heading out of the city. I approached the driver. Excuse me. He didn't answer. It goes to the airport, right? He looked at me in the rearview mirror. Then, last stop, he said. Where? He didn't answer. I returned to my seat. I had no phone reception. The bus completely left the city behind. Streetlights grew scarce. Houses disappeared. Dark trees took their place. After a while, the elderly man stood up. He walked toward the driver. I'm getting off here. The driver slammed the brakes. The doors opened. The man got off. But outside, there was nothing. No house. No road. No stop. Just a dark forest. The man stepped off the bus and started walking into the darkness. The doors closed. I looked at the driver. Why did he get off there? The driver didn't answer. The young woman beside me took off her headphones. She leaned toward me. Don't get off. What? At any stop. Why? The woman looked out the window. Because this bus. doesn't take people to the airport. At that moment, the lights inside the bus went out. The woman whispered, "This isn't your first time boarding tonight." "What do you mean?" The woman unlocked her phone. There was a photo on the screen. In the photo, the same bus, the same driver, the same seats, and me. I was sitting in the back seat. The woman looked at me. "This photo was taken last night." I couldn't reply, because last night, I was at the hotel. The woman closed her phone. Then the driver looked at us in the mirror. "Next stop," he said. The woman shook her head. "We are not getting off here." The driver smiled. And for the first time, all the passengers inside the bus turned toward me at the same time. All three of them said the exact same thing. "You will get off." All three of them turning toward me at the same time made me feel as if I had held my breath for several seconds. Then the bus set off again. The lights came back on. Everything seemed to have returned to normal. The elderly man was gone. However, the three people who were on the bus just a moment ago were still sitting in the same manner. The young woman was looking at me. "What did you do?" "Nothing." "Did you speak to him?" "No." The woman closed her eyes. "Good. Who was he?" She didn't answer. The man at the front suddenly stood up. He approached the driver. "I will get off at the next stop." The young woman immediately. "No." The man looked at her. "What? Don't get off." The man laughed. "This is my first time riding this bus." The woman shook her head. "No. You rode it before too." The man fell silent. The driver looked at him in the mirror. "The last stop is approaching." The man sat back down in his seat. I looked at my phone. It was 00:17. Yet it was 23:48 when I boarded the bus. More than half an hour had passed. I opened the map again. The blue location marker was still moving. But no road was visible. Just a gray screen. Then a notification arrived on my phone. "Would you like to share your location?" The notification appeared normal. However, the address written underneath was the address of the hotel. Furthermore, I had left the hotel about 40 minutes ago. The young woman saw the screen. "Turn off your phone." "Why?" "Because he is trying to find you." "Who?" Without answering, the woman stood up. "The driver." The driver was watching us through the rearview mirror. The woman whispered to me, "Now listen to me. The bus will stop shortly. The doors will open. The driver will tell you to get off. No matter what happens, do not get up from your seat." Just at that moment, the bus slowed down. A small stop appeared in front of us. On the sign, "Stop 13," was written. The bus stopped. The doors opened. The driver turned his head toward me. "Last stop." The woman grabbed my arm. "Don't get off." The driver spoke again. "Sir, you need to get off." The other two people inside the bus stood up. All three walked toward the door. I didn't move from my spot. The driver became angry. "Get off." The woman held my arm even tighter. "Don't look." But I looked outside. At the stop, 3 people were waiting. The elderly man, the woman with headphones, and the man from the front. All 3 were looking at the bus. All 3 were inside the bus just a moment ago. The doors closed. The driver stepped on the gas. The young woman took a deep breath. Then she looked at me. Now it has noticed you. What has? The woman looked out the window. The bus. There was silence for a while. Then a sound came from the back. Thud. A seat had moved. We turned around. On the very back seat of the bus, the elderly man was sitting, and in his hand he held my passport. The elderly man sat silently in the back seat. The passport in his hand was my passport. I didn't move from my spot. The young woman whispered to me, "Don't talk to him." The man raised his head. "Daniel." He said my name. Coldness filled my inside. "Where did you find my passport?" The man didn't answer. He opened the passport. He showed the photo inside. "Is this you?" "Yes." The man smiled. "No." The young woman stood up. "Driver." The driver looked back through the mirror. When he saw the elderly man, his face changed completely. "You shouldn't be here." The man answered calmly. "I never left." The bus suddenly slammed the brakes. We were all thrown forward. The driver locked the doors. Then he stood up and walked toward the back. "Give me the passport." The elderly man shook his head. "Not yet." The driver took a few more steps. Just at that moment, all the screens on the bus turned on at the same time. The stop information disappeared. A date replaced it. 14 August 2023, 23:48. The young woman looked at the screen. "No." "What did you see?" "This bus's first run." "So what?" 3 years ago. This bus had an accident. The driver stopped. "No one knows that." The woman looked at him. "I know. Because I was on that bus." Silence fell. "Did you survive?" The woman shook her head. "No." The moment she said that, all the lights inside the bus went out. In the dark, only the emergency exit sign was visible. Then came the elderly man's voice. "Now you remember." The woman began to cry. "I died." I pulled back. "What nonsense is this?" The woman looked at me. "Why are you here?" "I'm going to the airport." "No." "You boarded this bus 3 years ago." "No." The woman shook her head. "You died in the accident too." At that moment, an image came to my mind. Rain. The sound of brakes. Glass breaking. And the moment the bus overturned. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was on the bus. However, in the seat in front of me, myself from 3 years ago was sitting. I looked at myself. My younger self turned to me and smiled. Then he raised the ticket in his hand. Only one thing was written on the ticket. One way, no return. The driver came beside us. We have finally reached the last stop. I looked out the window. The airport was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was the wreckage of the bus. among the trees, with police vehicles around it. And on the ground, 3 bodies: the young woman, the man from the front, and me. The driver looked at me. "Now, which of you will get off?" My younger self stood up and started walking toward me. My younger self started walking toward me. I looked at his face. There was no fear in his eyes. It was as if he had been waiting for me. "You?" He didn't answer. He extended the ticket in his hand to me. "This is yours." I took the ticket. My name was written on it. However, the date section was blank. What am I supposed to do? My younger self pointed to the bus door. "Get off." I looked outside. The wreckage was still there. The lights of the police vehicles were flashing among the trees. A police officer was kneeling beside the wreckage. Then he raised his head. He looked at us, as if he could see that we were inside the bus. He raised his hand. "Daniel." I could hear his voice. "I'm here." The officer stood up. However, my younger self held my arm. "You can't hear him." "Why?" "Because he called you 3 years ago." Suddenly, another image appeared in my memory. Right after the accident, the same police officer had come beside the bus. He had searched for me, yet he couldn't find me, because I had long been dead. And now, for 3 years, I was reliving the exact same night inside this bus. My younger self whispered, "One of us can leave." "Who?" "The one who survived." "You?" He shook his head. "Not me." The elderly man inside the bus stood up. "Enough." The driver opened the door. Cold air rushed in from outside. My younger self looked at me. Now what?" "Remember the last thing you need to remember." I closed my eyes. And I remembered. At the moment of the accident, there were 4 people on the bus. Me, the young woman, the man at the front, and the driver. Yet only 3 bodies were found in the police report. The driver's body was never found. I opened my eyes. I looked at the driver. The man smiled. "Finally, you." I used to run this line before the accident, too. "Are you dead?" He bowed his head. "It doesn't matter for me." "What do you want?" "One more passenger." The elderly man at the back came forward. "Let him go this time." The driver shook his head. "Someone must take his place." My younger self looked at me. Then he stepped out of the bus. I shouted after him, "No." However, my younger self didn't turn back. The police officer ran toward him. And the moment he touched him, my younger self vanished into thin air. The officer looked around in bewilderment. Then he walked toward the bus. I was still inside. The officer came to the door. "Is anyone in here?" I didn't answer, because the driver leaned into my ear and whispered, "Now it's your turn." The police officer stepped inside the bus. And at that moment, for the first time, I clearly saw the driver's face. It was my face. The moment I saw the driver's face, my entire body froze. My face. Yet the police officer still hadn't noticed a thing. The man sitting in the driver's seat calmly looked at the steering wheel. The officer turned to me. "Are you okay?" I couldn't reply. The officer asked again. "Are you alone here?" I looked at the driver, then at the back seats. The elderly man was gone. The young woman was gone. The man at the front was gone. Just me and the driver were there. The officer reached for his radio. "Dispatch, I found one person inside the bus." Static came from the radio. Then a woman's voice. "Officer, there can't be anyone inside that bus." The officer frowned. "What do you mean?" "The bus crashed 3 years ago." The officer looked at me. "Who are you?" I said my name. "Daniel." The officer went silent for a few seconds. "Your surname?" I told him. The officer's face changed. "This name." He looked back at his radio. "Dispatch, Daniel on the crash victim list." His voice cut off. Then he looked at me. "You." "What?" "You are one of the passengers who died 3 years ago." I shook my head. "No." The officer slowly backed away. "Show your ID." I reached into my pocket. My passport wasn't there. Instead, there was a bus ticket. I pulled out the ticket. The officer took it. He looked at the date on it. 14 August 2023. The officer whispered, "Today is 14 August 2026. The driver smiled. "You're late." The officer drew his gun. He pointed it at the driver. "Who are you?" The driver raised his head. And the police officer saw his own face. Because the driver's face was no longer mine. It was the officer's face. The officer stumbled backward. "This is impossible." The driver stood up. "Every route needs a driver." The officer raised his gun. However, before he could pull the trigger, the bus doors closed. The engine started. The officer was left outside. I was still inside the bus. The driver sat in his seat. "Now it's your turn." "Where are we going?" The driver looked at me in the mirror. "To the first stop." "Which one?" "Where you boarded." The bus set off. The night from 3 years ago began again. The same road. The same rain. The same stop. However, this time, there was a passenger waiting at the stop. A young man. Luggage in hand. He was looking at his phone. The bus stopped. The doors opened. The man came inside. He looked at me. Then to the driver. "It goes to the airport, right?" The driver nodded his head. "Last stop." The man scanned his card. He walked toward the back. As I looked at him, my phone vibrated. There was a single message on the screen. "Protect the next passenger." Beneath the message, my own number was visible. I read the message again. "Protect the next passenger." The sender's number was my number. The new passenger sat in the back seat. He put on his headphones and began looking out the window. I immediately went beside him. "You need to get off this bus." The man looked at me in surprise. "What?" "Get off at the next stop." "Why?" Before answering, I looked at the driver. He was watching us through the mirror. "It's not safe to stay here." The man laughed. "Are you okay?" Just then the bus slowed down. The driver, "Next stop," he said. I grabbed the man's arm. "Get off." The doors opened. The man stood up. However, just as he approached the door, the driver slammed the brakes. The doors closed. The man fell back into his seat. "What are you doing?" The driver didn't answer. I walked forward. "Open the door." The driver looked at me in the mirror. "No one can get off until the last stop." "Let him go." "No can do." "Why?" The driver smiled. "Because now you are in his place." At that moment the bus screen changed. Passengers 4. The names appeared in order. Daniel, Marcus, Anna, and the last name was the new passenger's name. However, there was a date beside it. 14 August 2026. Beside my name, however, 14 August 2023 was written. The new passenger looked at the screen. "What is this?" "Turn off your phone." "Why?" "Because whatever you see." "Don't believe the driver." The driver suddenly hit the brakes. The bus stopped. The doors opened. This time outside was the airport. Lights, people, taxis. Everything appeared normal. The new passenger stood up. "There's the airport." I stood up too. The driver said nothing. I walked toward the door. Just as I was about to step outside, the new passenger grabbed my arm. "Wait." "Why?" He showed me his phone. A live news story was on his screen. The Night 17 bus that disappeared 3 years ago has been found. Underneath was a photo. In the photo was our bus, and I looked at the date of the news. 14 August 2023. The new passenger looked at me. This news was published 3 years ago. I raised my head. The airport instantly vanished. In its place came the dark forest. The doors closed. The driver stepped on the gas. And a final message arrived on my phone. "You saved him." Underneath it, a second message appeared. "Now save yourself." The bus was advancing through the dark forest. The new passenger was still sitting beside me. Neither of us was speaking anymore. I was trying not to look at the driver's face. However, I could see him in his reflection on the glass. And in his reflection, the driver's seat was empty. The steering wheel was turning by itself. "Don't look," I said. The new passenger looked at me. "At what?" "At the front." However, it was too late. He saw the reflection in the glass, too. "Where is the driver?" I couldn't answer. The bus accelerated. The road ahead of us was completely dark. Then the bus screen turned back on. Final stop 0243. I looked at my watch. 0241. 2 minutes remained. My phone vibrated. New message. "When the doors open, only one can get off." Underneath it, "Choose the right person this time." The new passenger saw the message. "Who is sending these?" "My number." "Are you sending them?" "No." The you from the past. I nodded. I think so. The bus slowed down. A stop appeared in the distance. On it, Night 17 final stop, was written. Time 02:43. The doors opened. Outside was the first stop I had boarded at. The same street, the same sign, the same rain. Everything looked just like it did 3 years ago. The new passenger stood up. Get off. No. The message says so. The message says one of us will get off. The driver's voice came from behind. One of you must stay. I slowly turned around. In the driver's seat, I was sitting. However, this time my face looked much older. I've been driving this bus for 3 years. Are you my future? No. Then who are you? He smiled. The last passenger. The new passenger looked at me. What are we going to do? I thought. Then I noticed the emergency exit door of the bus. There was a small red lever on the door. The driver shouted, "Don't touch it." I did the exact opposite. I pulled the lever. The emergency exit door opened. Cold air flooded into the bus. The driver stood up. You don't know what you're doing. Maybe. I pushed the new passenger toward the door. Now. The man jumped outside. I jumped right after him. A screeching brake sound like a scream came from inside the bus. Then, boom! The bus vanished into the darkness. Only the new passenger and I remained on the street. It was raining. I looked at my phone screen. Time 02:44. The messages were deleted. The phone started getting reception. The new passenger looked at me. I think we escaped. I nodded my head. However, after that, an engine sound came from behind us. We turned around. The exact same bus was standing again at the end of the street. Its doors opened. There was no one in the driver's seat. An announcement was heard from inside. Night 17, final stop. And the new passenger's phone rang. The new passenger's phone was ringing. He looked at the screen. The caller showed Daniel. My name. He didn't answer. It rang again. Then a message arrived. Get back on the bus. The new passenger looked at me. This is your number. I am not sending it. I pulled out my phone. The screen was completely black. Then it turned on by itself. There was a single photo. In the photo, the new passenger and I were sitting side by side on the bus. The time the photo was taken, 02:44. However, there was someone else behind the photo. The driver. And this time I could clearly see his face. It wasn't my face. It was the new passenger's face. The new passenger saw the photo. Yes, this is me. I nodded my head. The bus doors were still open. The announcement came from inside again. Last passenger, please board the bus. The new passenger took a step. I grabbed his arm. No. Maybe I need to go. No. What if I don't go? The lights inside the bus went out one by one. Then only the very back seat lit up. There, one person was sitting, myself from 3 years ago. He looked at me, and he nodded his head, as if to say, "Let him go." The new passenger released my arm. He walked toward the bus. "Stop." However, he didn't turn around. He came to the door. Just as he was about to step inside, a police vehicle came from behind the bus. The headlights hit us. A police officer stepped out of the car. "Both of you step back." The new passenger stopped. The officer looked at the bus, then at us. "This bus," his voice trembled, "crashed here 3 years ago. We know that too." The officer shook his head. "No." "What?" "The bus burned down 3 years ago." "What?" The officer opened an old photo on his phone. In the photo was the burned wreckage of the same bus. "This vehicle hasn't been operational for 3 years." We looked behind us. The bus was still there. However, the officer couldn't see it. "There is no bus here." The new passenger looked at me. "Can you see it?" "Yes." The officer approached us. "Are both of you okay?" The new passenger nodded. "I think so." The officer looked at me. "What is your name?" "Daniel." The officer paused for a moment. Then he opened a list on his phone. "Daniel." "What?" "This name." He turned the list toward me. In the first row, Daniel 14 August 2023 died. In the second row, Anna 14 August 2023 died. In the third row, Marcus 14 August 2023 died. And in the last row was the new passenger's name. Status: missing. The officer looked at me. "Why are you here?" I couldn't answer. I turned around. The bus was gone now. There was only an empty road. The new passenger had vanished too. The officer called out to me again. "Sir." My phone vibrated. There was a single message on the screen. "You saved him." Then a second message. "However, now you are in his place." Beneath the message, a bus ticket appeared. Night 17. Passenger Daniel. Date 14 August 2027. And at the very bottom, "See you at the first stop." After that night, I never traveled by bus again. However, every year, on the night of August 14 at exactly 23:48, the exact same notification arrives on my phone. Night 17 is approaching. And for the last 2 years, the passenger count in the notification has been changing. The first year, 1 passenger. The second year, 2 passengers. And this year, 3 passengers. I was traveling alone in Italy. It was the last day of the trip. I had a flight the next morning. That evening, I went for a walk in a small coastal town. It was past midnight. The streets were almost completely empty. On my way back to my hotel, I entered a small cafe. I got a coffee and sat at a table. I left my bag next to the chair. About 20 minutes later, I got up. I took my bag. I returned to the hotel. I went into the room and took a shower. Then I opened my bag to get my passport. There was no passport. I emptied the entire bag. Nothing. I checked my pockets. Nothing. I searched the room. Nothing. I started to panic. I couldn't board the plane without a passport. I remembered the table at the cafe. Maybe I had left it there. I went outside again. When I arrived at the cafe, it was closed. There was a small employee entrance next to the door. I pressed the doorbell. A minute later, an old man opened the door. Could I have forgotten my passport here? The man looked at my face. Then, you came yesterday too. No. No, you came. I came for the first time today. The man shook his head. No. Then he went inside. I waited at the door. A few seconds later, he returned with a small black bag in his hand. He handed the bag to me. This is yours. I opened the bag. Inside was my passport, but there was something else beside it. A hotel key. On it was written, Room 17. This isn't mine. The man frowned. It came out of this bag. From my bag. Yes. I wanted to give the key back. The man shook his head. Take it. No. It's yours. I returned to my hotel. I went to the reception desk. Do you have a room called Room 17? The woman looked at the computer. Then her expression changed. No. Has there never been one? There is no room number 17 in this hotel. I placed the key on the desk. The woman looked at the key. Suddenly, where did you find this key? At the cafe. The woman stood up. Just a moment. She went to the back office. About 5 minutes later, she returned. She had an old file in her hand. She opened the file. She took out a photograph from inside. The photograph showed a hotel corridor. Above the door, it was written, 17. This is the old section of the hotel. The old section. It was closed down years ago. Why? The woman didn't answer. Then she turned the photograph over. There was a name written on the back. Alina Mortti. Underneath a date. May 12, 2019. Who is this woman? The woman said quietly. A tourist. What happened to her? She disappeared. Was she found? She shook her head. No. Then she looked at me. The night we found her passport. We also found the same key. My heart accelerated. Next to my passport. The woman shook her head. No. Next to her passport. I didn't sleep in my room that night. I placed my passport on the desk. I left the key beside it. At 3:17, there was a knock at my door. Once, then twice. A woman's voice came from outside the door. Will you give me my passport back? I froze in bed. The voice came again. You took my passport. I didn't approach the door. I grabbed my phone. I wanted to call the reception desk. But on the phone screen, my room number had changed. Room 17. And from under the door, a small white envelope was pushed inside. My name was written on it. When I opened the envelope, a single photograph came out of it. The photograph showed me. I was sitting in the cafe. On the back of the photograph, it was written, "Be at the train station tomorrow at 12:00. Underneath it, "You will get your passport back there." The next day at 11:40, I went to the train station. I hadn't slept all night. I was carrying the envelope and the photograph in my pocket. My passport was still at the hotel. At least that's what I thought. When I entered the station, the first thing I noticed was that the platforms were almost completely empty. At exactly 12:00, a message arrived on my phone. Platform 6. I walked to Platform 6. There was only one woman there. She was around 30 years old. She was carrying a small brown bag in her hand. When she saw me, she stood up. "Elena." "No." The woman's expression changed. "You're not Elena." "I came for my passport." The woman looked at me for a few seconds. Then, "You're late." "For what?" "3 years." My heart accelerated. "Who are you?" The woman didn't answer. She took out a passport from her bag. She handed it to me. The passport was my passport, but the date on the cover was different. I opened the passport. My photograph was there. My name was there. But my birth date was wrong. And on the last page, there was a stamp. May 12, 2019. What is this? The woman. This passport doesn't belong to you. It's my photo. Because it chose you. What? The woman looked at the train tracks behind her. Elena said the same thing. Where is Elena? The woman looked at me. On Platform 6. Went. Every day. Just then, an announcement came from the station. But it wasn't a normal train announcement. A woman's voice was heard over the loudspeaker. "Elena Morty, please come to Platform 6. The woman bowed her head. "You must go now. Give me my passport." "This isn't your passport." "I want mine." The woman pulled another item from her bag. A small old photograph. In the photo, there was a hotel room. Above the door it was written, 17. A woman was standing in front of the door. Elena. And next to her, me. But the date of the photo, May 12, 2019. Why am I in this photo? The woman didn't answer. The sound of a train was heard. An old train appeared at the end of the tracks. All the screens in the station turned off at the same time. The woman took her bag. "Go back now." "Where?" "To the hotel." "My passport." "In your room." "Room 17." The woman nodded. "Room 17 is your room now." The train entered the platform. The doors opened. There were no passengers inside. The woman boarded the train. Before the doors closed, she looked at me one last time. "No matter who knocks on your door tonight, don't you dare open it." The train moved. My phone vibrated. A new message. "We found your passport." Followed by a second message. "But when you come to get it." The message completed a few seconds later. "You won't be alone in the room." When I returned to the hotel, it was 1820. The woman at the reception desk immediately stood up when she saw me. "Did you go to the station?" "Yes." The woman's face grew tense. "Did you see her?" "Who?" "Elena." I paused for a moment. "How do you know her name?" The woman didn't answer. She simply handed me my room key. "Don't stay in your room tonight." The same thing again. "No." "What happened this time?" The woman leaned in and lowered her voice. Room 17's door opened. "When?" "Today." "Who opened it?" "Nobody knows." I took my key. I didn't want to go up to the room. But my passport was still there. At least that's what the message said. I opened my door. The room looked normal. My bag was on the bed. I opened the bag to find my passport. Inside, there was no passport. Instead, there was a small brown envelope. On it was written, "Elena." I didn't open the envelope, because at that moment, the sound of running water came from the bathroom. The faucet was running, yet I hadn't entered the bathroom. I waited a few seconds in front of the door. Then the sound stopped. I entered the bathroom. The faucet was turned off. On the mirror, a single sentence was written in the steam. "If you're looking for your passport, find your own photo first." I looked in the mirror. I saw my own reflection. But after a few seconds, my reflection didn't move. I turned my head. It was still looking at me in the mirror. Slowly, it raised its hand. I didn't raise mine. The reflection wrote a number on the mirror with its finger. 17. Then the image in the mirror vanished. A dark corridor appeared. At the end of the corridor was a door. Above the door it was written, 17. My phone rang. It was the woman from reception. "Hello." "Daniel, get out of the room immediately." "Why?" "Because on the security camera." The woman stopped speaking. "What?" "Someone else is visible in the room with you." I turned around. The room was empty. "Who?" The woman held her breath. "Elena." Right at that moment, the brown envelope on the bed opened. A passport came out from inside it. My passport. But the photo inside the passport was no longer my photo. Elena was in the photo. The woman shouted from the other end of the phone, "Daniel, get out of the room." The door handle moved down. Someone was trying to open the door from the outside. Then a woman's voice was heard. "Why did you take my passport?" The voice wasn't coming from the corridor. It was coming from inside the room. The voice had come from inside the room. "Why did you take my passport?" Slowly I turned around. There was no one there. But the passport on the bed had opened. I looked at the photo inside again. Alina's face was still there. I didn't pull the phone away from my ear. The reception clerk. "Daniel, listen to me. Can you get out through the window?" "The window is on the 3rd floor." "It doesn't matter. You need to get out of the room." Right at that moment, there was another knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. This time, I heard my own voice from behind the door. "Daniel, open the door." I almost hung up the phone. It's my voice. The woman immediately. What is it saying? It's mimicking my voice. Definitely do not open the door. A shadow passed under the door. Then the shadow came back. Footsteps were wandering in the corridor. But no one was knocking on the door anymore. A notification popped up on my phone. Room 17, access granted. At the bottom of the screen was a small camera icon. I tapped it. A live feed opened. I was seeing a corridor. Above the door it was written 17. But the door in the video was the door to my room. The camera angle was looking inside from the corridor. And in the footage, I was sitting on the bed. The phone was in my hand. But at that moment, I was in the bathroom. The me in the video raised his head. He looked directly at the camera. Then he stood up and walked to the door. I held my breath. The me in the video stopped in front of the door. He opened the door. Elena was standing in the corridor. I couldn't see her face clearly. Elena said something to the me in the video. Then both of them walked together and went off camera. The phone screen went dark. A whisper came from behind me. Now it's your turn. I walked out of the bathroom. The room was completely empty. My bag was on the bed. The passport was gone too. But the door to the room was open. The corridor was silent. I remembered what the reception clerk had said. Get out of the room. I walked toward the door. Just as I was about to leave, I saw a small photo on the floor. I picked it up. In the photo, there was the hotel lobby. I was standing in front of the photo. Beside me, the reception clerk. And behind us, Elena. The date of the photo, May 12, 2019. I turned the photo over. Handwritten on the back. Daniel, you don't remember this. Underneath was a second sentence. Because you didn't lose your passport, you lost your identity. The phone rang again. This time it wasn't the reception clerk. The caller, Elena Mortti. I answered it. A long silence came from the other end. Then a woman's voice. Daniel. Elena. Did you find my passport? Who are you? The woman went silent for a few seconds. Then, Lai. Came on the same plane as you. What? In 2019. At that moment, the call duration timer on the phone screen froze. 0017. And at the end of the corridor, door number 17 appeared. There was no such room on the hotel layout. But the door was open. Light was coming from inside. And in front of the door, my passport was resting. I looked at my passport in front of the door. For a moment, I couldn't move. Then the woman on the other end of the phone spoke again. Don't take it. Elena. Daniel, don't you dare go through that door. My passport is there. That passport isn't yours anymore. I approached the door. Soft music was playing from inside. The kind of slow piano melody that plays in an old hotel lobby. The door really had 17 written on it. I reached out my hand to the door handle. Daniel. Elena's voice was in panic this time. Listen to me. If you enter that room when you come out, you won't remember who you are. How do you know? Silence. Because I entered. I didn't open the door. In 2019. Yes. What happened next? Elena's voice trembled. I lost my passport. The same thing. Then I found room 17 of the hotel. You went inside. Yes. And when I woke up the next morning, I couldn't remember my own name. I looked at the corridor. How did you get out? I didn't. What? I'm still in there. The phone almost slipped from my hand. Elena. The person talking to you right now is the Elena inside the room. A woman's voice came from behind the door. Daniel. I pulled the phone away from my ear. The voice was coming from inside the door. Take your passport. Elena shouted on the phone. Run. The lights in the corridor went out all at once. The emergency lights turned on. The light behind door 17 grew even stronger. My passport was resting on the floor. Then it opened on its own. The photo page turned upward. In the photo, I wasn't there. Elena was. But right underneath, a new photo appeared. My photo. And next to the photo, room 17, current occupant. The phone rang again. This time the caller appeared as me. I answered. I heard my own voice. Daniel, don't you dare return to the hotel. I'm already at the hotel. The voice on the other end paused for a few seconds. Then, no. What do you mean, no? You never returned to the hotel. At that moment, the corridor behind me vanished. All of a sudden, I found myself inside a train. Elena was sitting across from me. The same brown bag. The same face. The same outfit. She looked at me. You finally remembered. Remembered what? Elena pulled 2 passports from her bag. She handed one to me. My passport. She opened the other one. Her own passport. Both had the exact same entry stamp. May 12, 2019, Italy. Elena whispered. We didn't come to this country today. What? We came 3 years ago. No. And we never checked into the hotel. Then, Elena looked at me. We got lost in that hotel. An announcement was heard from outside the train. Next stop, room 17. Elena raised her head. Now it's time to wake up. And all the lights of the train went out. When the lights of the train went out, I couldn't see anything for a few seconds. Then the sound of a door came from afar. Clack. A light turned on. Elena was standing in front of me. But we weren't on the train anymore. We were in a hotel corridor. Above the door it was written, 17. Elena looked at me. You've been here before. I don't remember. You're not supposed to remember. At the end of the corridor was a mirror. I walked toward the mirror. I saw my reflection. But the reflection wasn't moving at the exact same time as me. It was lagging a few seconds behind. I raised my hand. My reflection raised its hand a few seconds later. Then the reflection said something to me. I couldn't hear its voice, but I could read its lips. Don't give away your passport. Elena's voice came from behind me. It's too late now. I turned around. Elena wasn't there. I was alone in the corridor. I was standing in front of door 17. The door opened slowly. Inside was a small hotel room. My suitcase was lying on the bed. There were 2 passports on the desk. One had my name on it. The other had Elena Mortti written on it. I approached the desk. I opened the passports. Both had the exact same photo. My photo. At that moment, the door behind me closed. A woman's voice came from inside. "Do you remember now?" I turned around. Elena was standing by the bed. "What are you?" "I am the last person left here. Since 2019. She shook her head. "No." "What do you mean, no?" "I left in 2019. "How?" "With someone else's passport." She held up the passport in her hand. "If you take someone's identity, the room lets you go." "Whose identity did you take?" Elena looked at me. "Yours." My heart felt like it stopped. "I don't know you." "It's normal that you don't." "Why?" "Because you took my identity too." At that moment, the clock on the room wall started ticking. 03:17. Elena whispered. Every year on the exact same night. The clock's hand moved forward. 03:18. One of us returns to the room. 03:19. The other one walks out. 03:20. Elena stepped closer to me. "Tonight it's your turn." She handed me one of the passports on the desk. "Whichever one you choose. The other will remain in the room." She placed the passports in front of me. Both had the exact same photo. Both had different names. And both had the same sentence on the last page. "This passport does not belong to its owner." Elena walked toward the door. "Decide quickly. What if I don't choose?" Elena opened the door. At the end of the corridor, I saw the train station. "In that case, the room makes the decision on your behalf." The door closed, and one of the 2 passports in the room opened on its own. The photo inside changed. Elena was no longer in the photo. I was. Underneath it was written, Elena Mortti. I looked at the passport again. My photo was on it. But the name, Elena Mortti. Suddenly the room door opened. Elena rushed in. Fear was on her face. "Drop it. This is my passport." "No. The photo is mine." "Having your photo on it doesn't mean you have the identity." I closed the passport. "What did you do to me?" Elena didn't answer. She approached the desk. She picked up the other passport. "When we came here in 2019, we both got lost. We didn't know each other." "Right. Then why do our passports have each other's photos?" Elena avoided eye contact. "Because the room doesn't swap people." "What does it do?" "It scrambles their identities." "How?" "It replaces the memories of the person who enters with another person's life." At that moment, my head began to throb. An image came to mind. I was sitting in the cafe. But this time, Elena was at the table. Then the train station. Then the hotel. Then room 17. I remembered everything. I had genuinely come here in 2019. Elena was by my side too. But we weren't tourists. We had come to investigate this room. You lied to me. Elena nodded her head. Because if you remember, you will go back. What were we looking for? The first person who disappeared. Who? Before answering, Elena pointed to the old painting on the room wall. Behind the painting was a small hatch. I opened the hatch. Dozens of passports spilled out from inside. All belonged to different people. But on every single photo were the exact same two faces. Mine. Elena's. Elena whispered. This room has been turning people into each other for years. And are you trying to stop this? No. Then what? I'm trying to get out. The clock on the desk began to tick again. 03:17. Elena's face changed. Our time is up. What will happen? The door will open. The door handle pressed down. We both looked at the door. A man's voice came from outside. Have your passports ready. Elena pulled back. It's him. Who? The first one to disappear. The door opened. A man was standing in the corridor. He had an old passport in his hand. When I looked at his face, I recognized him. It was the old man from the cafe. But according to his age in the photo, he had disappeared at least 30 years ago. The man smiled. Which one of you is Elena? Elena didn't answer. The man looked at me. Then it's you. He held out his hand. Give me your passport. And the door behind me locked on its own. The man was still extending his hand toward me. Give me your passport. Elena immediately stood in front of me. No. The man looked at her. It's not your turn. It is this time. The man smiled. You say the exact same thing every time. Then he turned to me. If you give me your passport, you can leave. And if I don't, you stay here. The clock on the room wall had stopped at 03:17. All the passports on the desk opened at the exact same time. The pages flipped on their own. Then all the lights in the room went out. In the dark, Elena's voice came. Now. What? Burn your passport. She threw the lighter to me. I opened the passport. My photo was there. But my name. Elena Mortti. I struck the lighter. I set the corner of the passport on fire. The man suddenly screamed. No. The flame grew. The other passports in the room began to catch fire as well. Voices of people rose from the walls. The voices of people who had been lost for years. My passport. Get me out. I don't remember my name. The man charged toward me. Elena tried to stop him. The man shoved Elena aside. Then he reached me. Just as he was about to snatch the passport from my hand, the mirror shattered. Hundreds of passports poured out from behind the mirror. The man froze. Elena shouted, "To the door now." I ran to the door. The lock had opened. I burst into the corridor. Elena followed right behind me. The man remained in the room. We slammed the door shut. Pounding sounds began coming from inside. Bang! Bang! Then silence. Daylight was visible at the end of the corridor. We started running. A door opened. I found myself in the hotel lobby. The reception clerk was looking at me. Daniel. Yes. Are you okay? Alina was standing beside me. But the reception clerk didn't look at her. Don't you see her? See what? I pointed at Alina. The woman frowned. You're alone here. Alina looked at me. There was a strange smile on her face. Then she slowly backed away. I can finally leave now. What? She handed me the passport in her hand. This is yours. I opened the passport. My photo was there. My name was there. My birth date was correct. Everything had returned to normal. Alina walked toward the door. Aren't you coming? She shook her head. My passport is still inside. At that moment, I turned around. I looked down the corridor 17. There was no door there anymore. Just a flat wall. Alina was gone too. I told the police everything. I asked about the man at the cafe. No one knew him. There was no guest named Alina Morty in the hotel records either. But a few days later, while passing through passport control at the airport, the officer suddenly stopped. He looked at my passport, then at my face. Is there a problem? The officer looked back at the screen. This passport number has been used before. When? He looked at the screen. May 12, 2019. By whom? The officer went silent for a few seconds. Then, Alina Morty. He handed my passport back. Strange. What? Because this person was reported missing in 2019. From that day on, I never separated from my passport. But sometimes, when I make a hotel reservation, a room number automatically appears in the system. I don't choose it. It's the exact same number every single time. And whenever I try to cancel the reservation, a single message pops up on the screen. Your identity has been verified. And underneath it, Alina Morty.